I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
There we go.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, to another Anatomy of a Movie. No, we are not doing Almost Famous.
But it's such a good song.
Such a good song.
Such a good movie.
It is a very good movie. And you never really know someone until they're uncool. What's the exact quote? Why am I forgetting it?
Well, that means a lot of people know me.
Well, I don't know what to say about that. We today are celebrating the life of Philip Seymour Hoffman, who obviously passed away very tragically, and we're not really going to get into that because that was just so tragic, and you can follow TMZ and all those stories about that. Today, we will be celebrating his actual body of work and how it's impacted us. And we for me, we're opening up with Tiny Dancer because Almost Famous, although he's not, his role is not huge in it, he left such an impact just in that movie alone.
Sure.
I feel like that's one of his strongest gifts, is that he can not be the star of a movie. He can just be this role that so many other actors would have just, like, I guess, kind of let pass by and not be memorable. And he lives them so deeply and so truly that you always remember him. And, like, Almost Famous was my introduction to Philip Seymour Hoffman. And he has this kind of dark intellectual edge to him that he carries through a lot of his movies. And you can't help but kind of fear him and also love him. And I just have so much respect for this actor, so I'm really excited that we're talking about him today.
Well, I want to open up with everyone's kind of introduction to him. So for me, in particular, Almost Famous was like the second movie that introduced me to him. The first one being, and I know Demetri's not the biggest fan of it, but Patch Adams. I like them in Patch Adams.
I like Patch Adams too.
Because he, for me, that scene where he says, I've studied the book 3 times over. I know everything there is to know about medicine, but I can't make her eat. And you could. You know what I mean? And just that scene alone, for me, was just so powerful in terms of, and I, for whatever reason, I related to his character in some frustrated way, which I guess says a lot.
His ability to change, to recognize.
So that was my introduction to him, and then obviously, the rest is history, so to speak. I mean, it's just, from there, obviously, Capote, The Master, and everything else in between. Ides of March, yeah.
It's all right. I mean, I already said my introduction was definitely Almost Famous, although I'm a huge Patch Adams fan. I like that movie. I saw that after. So, like, for years, though, I would watch Almost Famous at least once a year. And so that was really my big introduction to him. And then in more of the recent years, once I saw, like, Capote and did a little more research and, like, found out about his stage work and how really dedicated to the craft he was because he had such a love for it. You just keep learning more and more, and it was a very tragic loss that he's no longer with us.
For me, my introduction to Philip Seymour Hoffman, I was working at Universal Pictures at the time, a little branch office in Boston, and the movie that I first saw him in was in Scent of a Woman. He played the very jerky. He was like a prep school kid. Kind of, and that's when I do remember seeing him, like, for the first time, and that was like in '92. And for me too, "Son of a Woman" at the time was big because I was just, I was working for Universal Pictures, which I was working for this really big studio, and Al Pacino won an Academy Award, and so that was really cool. And "Son of a Woman" like did some did some good business for us. And then I remember seeing him in things like, he was in another Universal movie that I was a part of, The Getaway. He was in this other movie, small little B, again, horror comedy movie called My Boyfriend's Back, as well. And I don't know where you can find this movie. I had forgotten about this movie until I saw his filmography. It's actually, it's a fun little B movie called My Boyfriend's Back. I do remember him in Nobody's Fool with Paul Newman. So like this guy at a young age has worked with Al Pacino, he's working with Paul Newman, he's working with actors who will be considered some of the greats. And then going on, he was in a really good movie called Hard Eight. And then I always remember him in Twister. He was the hippie, like, storm chaser. Come on, man, we gotta go out there. Like, he was like, again, he's playing a different role. And you were like, hey, I can hang with that character. He was pretty cool. And then, of course, he was in movies like Boogie Nights. He had that relationship with, Paul, there were two Paul Andersons. I always get Paul W.S. or Paul T. Anderson, right?
Yeah.
Paul T. Anderson, and he had his relationship with him, and he was in his movies. And you said it, I think, best, is that it was very rare that he was ever the lead in a movie. And outside of a movie like Capote, in which he won the Academy Award, to me, his most memorable roles are the ones in which he was a support, not the lead. Outside of Capote, when you look at movies like, he wasn't the lead in Patch Adams. He wasn't the lead in movies like State and Maine, which is a great movie, and Almost Famous.
Even The Master.
Right.
You had Joaquin Phoenix and him. And that was a nice kind of dichotomy between the two of them, but I would say Joaquin was the lead.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, his presence, I can't really talk about The Master, but his presence as a supporting role is felt. He was in Red Dragon. Mission Impossible 3 is a movie that he was an amazing villain. The first 10 minutes or the first 5 minutes of that movie, where he's facing off with Tom Cruise and he has Michelle Monaghan taped up and he has a gun to her head and he's counting down. What a great opening to that movie. And he was a great villain.
Well, he does. The thing is, it's because in his acting, I feel like he and it's been mentioned, he doesn't shy away from his character's faults, but he presents layers.
Right.
So despite, whether it's a really horrible characteristic or an evil characteristic or an immoral characteristic, he shows that while simultaneously being such a full person that you want to know more about him. You're intrigued. And that's why his supporting roles can be so fulfilling. Yeah. It's because he doesn't take simply what's written on the page that can be played, oh, this guy's evil or this guy's bad. He really gives them a life and exposes them on these different layers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. And I'd just like to say, Demetri, you had mentioned Twister, and that's the big first role of Philip that I recognize him as, because in that movie he was that fun, happy-go-lucky guy who's chasing storms and he's crazy, and then all the devastation happens, but he showed heart and characters like that, and then that fun character always stuck with me. And then another fun movie that I always loved him in was Along Came Polly. And I felt like he was the scene stealer in every moment that he was in that movie. And I remember him more so than I remember the Ben Stiller's character, because he was more memorable. And just so I know Philip Seymour Hoffman as more the comedian actor, because I've seen a lot of his comedic roles.
Invention of Lying.
Compared to his dramatic roles.
Well, look at him in Charlie Wilson's War.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, the dialogue that frothed out of his mouth, he was awesome, and he could deliver swear words like no other, and he was great in that. And then, he could turn around and do a movie like Doubt. Mm-hmm. Which was a movie very thought-provoking, very well done, short movie, and here he is opposite Meryl Streep, and a good movie. Pirate Radio he was in. It's an okay movie, but he was fine in it. Again, I think where his strengths lied, I do remember him always as having a presence as a character, as a support, more so than the lead actor. And he seemed to be content. He didn't have to be the lead actor.
I read, Ides of March came out at this point a while ago, but you had George
2011, yeah.
You had Ryan Gosling, George Clooney, and all those guys, and especially since the election, was kind of not around that time, but his character was so powerful, very powerful, and again, to your point of playing it, he was so evil, but not. And again, I mean, they portrayed for me that movie, the way they portrayed politics and just the dirtiness of it, and everyone just shooting it so straight.
Yeah, and it was so that's a dark movie, and it's a great movie to break down. And when in 2011, Jesus, Ryan Gosling was on a run. I mean, if Drive, I believe, came out in 2011. Blue Valentine may have been 2011 as well. He had Crazy Stupid Love, and then he's in this movie, The Ides of March. I mean, like, the guy was just like nonstop working. So he's the it person, right? Mm-hmm. You got George Clooney in there as well, directing. He's in it. It's and you're right. Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in that movie was as much a chess player, but the way in which he did it. Like, he doesn't come off as being, like, evil. You just know that character knew how to play the game. And so it was weird. Like, I didn't know if I came off as him being evil. He just knew how to play the politics. Mm-hmm. Almost better than anybody else on the board. And then he was in Moneyball. And he's really, again, a completely different role. And for a guy that has a unique look, he could still be a chameleon. Mm-hmm. You could frump him up. You can make him look good. You can make him look like Capote. I mean, come on. Capote wasn't any big guy, and he could be a character, and he could take that character over, and he would be that person. And then in the next movie, he'd look different. He was literally a chameleon as a screen actor, movie character.
And in both character development and physical appearance and everything, such a chameleon. I think it's also important to note, because we've mentioned the word like support or supporting character a lot in this conversation today, and like it's the same as, that's not like a bad thing. I don't think it's like, leading people are better than supporting. It's not that way at all. Like, you need wonderful players in each. Like, art is about the ensemble, and to make great films you need an array of great actors. Sure. You can't really just have one person. So I think that he was able to grasp the depth of a person in so many few words that he was one of the best supports out there, because he could make anything feel like a huge role and a huge light.
This is a quote from Kathy Lee Gifford from my experience on Adventures of Serial Buddies, which is our movie. But she said, I went to her house to film literally like a 4-second scene at best. And, I was, so I try to be as polite as possible, just get in and get out type of deal. But she's like, no, we're going to do this, and I don't care if it takes all day. This is going to be the funniest 4 seconds in the movie. And I feel like that is his type of mentality. Like, it doesn't matter, and again, not that he does comedy, but whatever it is, right? If it's a dramatic role, if it's a comedic role, it's going to be, when he's on screen, it's going to be the best part of it, or at least try to be.
Yeah.
And not in a scene stealing way, just in a everything is important, and this is like a person, and like it's not something just fluff off because you have one line or who knows.
Correct. You mentioned how familiar are you with his Broadway work, Sarah?
I've done a lot of reading about it. I never got to see him on Broadway, which I'm very sad about, because he was nominated for multiple things. The Salesman, all these things, but I've known people who have seen him and have talked about it. And I mean, he went to school in New York. He went to Tisch, and he had this whole off-Broadway and on-Broadway career, won awards for it. And I think that balancing also the stage and Hollywood and us, I mean, like, it's a lot of work, and I think it's very respectable. And like as an actor, I would love to have a career like Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's something you look up to, and you just like it's amazing. It's astounding everything that he did. And I have so much respect. And I'm so sad that I never got to see him on the stage.
Demetri, are you? For me, I'm more familiar with his obviously on camera work. I know he did a lot of theater, but for me, in general, theater is kind of not something I'm in the know of.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's not because I dislike it.
Yeah,
I just as a kid growing up, theater just wasn't that readily available. You could go and buy a movie ticket and go into a movie ticket, and go into a movie theater and see a movie, and relatively inexpensive. There were playhouses in Boston and all, but it was just easier for me to go to a movie because the theaters were right up my street. I could walk to them. I can do whatever, and so. Unfortunately, I do not know of his career. He was very big in that. Well, I guess there is one thing that I know of. No matter the role when it came to being on Broadway or plays, like he could be in a Death of a Salesman, but then he could do Shakespeare in the Park. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't. He didn't just have to take the big Broadway role. He could just be in the park, and I think he even signed up for this year. I think he was going to do something to that effect. But I mean, he is he's like an actor's actor. He takes the gig. It was a profession for him. He looked upon it differently, perhaps than some other people that we look at who are big actors on the silver screen. But this gentleman was he was an actor's actor. He loved the art form, whether it's on a big movie screen or whether it's in Central Park.
Exactly, and it's not only the medium that he was able to be in. I mean, we talked about his versatility, but from genre to genre, change of film, whether it be, like he just was coming out in these huge blockbusters of like the Hunger Games and like playing, kind of mysterious-ish villain and doing that, and then going from that to movies like Capote to going to the indie art house films, kind of spanning all over. So it wasn't just stage and screen. It was ranges within those as well. He definitely, to me, he never felt boxed in. I feel like you could really give him pretty much any material and he was going to be able to live it. And it's crazy. It's wonderful.
You mentioned Hunger Games. Before we get into obviously what's going to happen with Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2, because there's still some scenes left unfinished for him. So I know they've what's good news about that is they've stated that yes, they were important scenes, but they can get around it. And I don't know if that's just an official statement just to, ease the public or if that's actually factual. But even in that, it's to me, with Hunger Games, it kind of transitioned him into a franchise actor. Mm-hmm. I know he's just rolling his head.
Well, no, I wasn't rolling my eyes. I mean, I was just trying to think about the implication of what you said.
I'm wondering where Phil's going with it.
Yeah, because, well, I mean, he was in Mission Impossible 3, but we know what happens to the character at the end of that. But different role for him. Yeah. Like, he was in something that was extremely commercial.
Yes.
That we hadn't seen him in. I don't think he's probably in a movie that's made so much money before in his career, right? Looking at it.
And, again, as we spoke, and he's not the main character, certainly, but with the implications that it has for Jennifer Lawrence's character, and especially, we haven't seen, obviously, Mockingjay even Part 1, but what that could have been.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully, with that official statement, I hope that for their sake, it can be easily worked out.
Yeah, and I think for the hiring of him in this role, number one, it gives Lionsgate, it gave cachet because you have someone who's known to be a more serious actor who's taking a big commercial, franchise role. So it gives cachet. So it gets the more theater-minded, independent crowd say, "Wow, Philip Seymour Hoffman's in a Hunger Games movie."
Also, but that was for on Lionsgate's benefit is that a lot of this the sequel to the original Hunger Games, the second volume installment, they used a lot of very reputable actors, especially in the supporting roles that were introduced. People who have just had very long-standing careers spanning both theater and film. I thought that was a really good choice, and why the hype for Hunger Games kept growing as they're making films, instead of being like, oh, it didn't live up to the first one. They're pushing boundaries, and I think it was by adding these actors who have such amazing backgrounds and such talent.
His scenes with Sutherland were amazing.
Oh yeah,
I mean, just in the spirit that it's intended, just how disheveled he was versus the president, and both had like kind of gray hair, and so I think that was very specific to the dichotomy of the two men. So I enjoyed that. Yeah,
and he's played scheming characters before, but I mean, look at the roles afforded. He's afforded the role, given the role. You can understand why. I mean, I don't know his reasons for taking it, but you can understand why, and this was his first foray, so to speak, into the mega budgeted, mega high grossing franchise kind of picture. And who knows, like maybe from that, like another franchise, like from Warner Brothers or a superhero, might have brought him in to be a player, like a supporting player. I mean, who knows? But
no, but to go off the scheming roles, because up until this point of the Hunger Game franchise, Philip Seymour Hoffman, he's done good roles and comedic roles and serious roles and dramatic roles like that. So his character Plutarch in the Hunger Games, it was a perfect fit for him, because we've seen him be the good guy and the bad guy, and then that's the character Plutarch. We don't know if he's good or bad, so I feel like Philip really fit that role for him.
Sure.
Because we knew, as an audience perspective, that he could be both very easily.
And he could act both and really get the audience thinking about that.
Definitely.
Hoffman, I want to talk about The Master, because for me, that was like, in terms of critical acclaim, that was a really good kind of, not necessarily the final piece of his work, but from what I can remember in terms of that. Are you guys familiar?
I've seen The Master once.
I am not a fan of P.T. Barnum Anderson movies, period. And when I saw the trailer for The Master, I was tuned out. I was like, "There's no way." Sorry, I'm not.
For me, the movie itself isn't the greatest, but just the chemistry between him and Joaquin Phoenix just blows out of water. And if nothing else, for the if some of you are in the same boat and haven't seen it, there's a great scene about where basically like the meaning of life. We all have, it's called The Master, and it's symbolic of why it's called The Master, right? And they have a great scene together at the end of like, hey, show me a world in which there is no master, and I'll join you. But everyone has a master. We're masters. You fans are our masters. But again,
my domain.
Just in that one in particular, what was great about it was, it seemed kind of off the cuff, but I'm sure that, it was very scripted in terms of he gave speeches. He was, L. Ron Hubbard in some sort of sense, right. And he went around and gave speeches and motivated people. And to see him play that role and to be that enticing, because now it's double layered, right? You're not just trying to fool the audience. Now you got to fool the people within the movie, and it was like, wow, it really blew me away.
Well, I'll go back to I'll just point at like Capote. When you look at Philip Seymour Hoffman, physical attributes, he does not look like Capote. And a lot of times when an actor or actress takes a role in which they're going to be a true life person, sometimes an argument is made, well, they're just doing a caricature of that person or an improvisation. Like they're not so much acting as they're trying to act like that person. But Philip Seymour Hoffman deservedly won the Academy Award. I have no qualms against that, but he really did take on Capote. I mean, again, from a physical attribute, from his dialogue, from his cadence and walk, and there were 2 Capote movies out that year, and they were the other actor was, he was equally as good, but this one just got more of the attention. And he, to be able to play somebody that is not what you would like, you don't look anything like him. To be able to do that in a way in which, as you're watching the movie, you forget about the actor. Okay. And he's Capote through that movie. It could have gone the other way. Like, you'd go, that's not Capote, that's Philip Seymour Hoffman trying to beat Capote.
Yeah, and it's because of that complete evolution that he had. Like, I wouldn't even say it's like a transformation. It was just crazy that, just some trivia on that. He won 23 awards for his performance in Capote, including the Oscar. On top of that, that performance is ranked as number 35 on Premiere Magazine's 100 Greatest Performances of All Time as of 2006. Or like that's the 2006 ranking. And I just think that credit was so due. That it was amazing. And in biopics, that's always really important that you can disappear and really honor the person you're.
Sure. Yeah. No, it is very important because it can go dreadfully wrong.
That is very true. I mean, would you say that The Master is the role you took away most from him, or?
It's, for me, Capote came out at a different time in my life, so, obviously I respect him, but, it didn't have as much of an impact for me as it did for other people. Had I been at the age when I saw Master, then I could have appreciated it more for what it was, and, I never really revisited Capote in that way to be able to appreciate it.
Now we all can watch it again.
Yes, we can.
I mean, I agree. Like, part of me, like, as an actor standpoint, like, I have to stand back and be, like, in awe of Capote. But I think that the role that I will take away most from him is still the first one that I was introduced to him with Almost Famous. And I think that comes from very, like, personal reason, just because, like, there are people you look up to, and I do look up to him, and, like, in that role, he's kind of a rough-edged mentor. And that to me is very much how I would like view him. It's like he has so many attributes that I idolize, but he did have these like rough, dark edges, and he was the person who you could, I feel like, was supportive and a true actor, but he wasn't scared of like the evil or like the hardships of being an actor, or it wasn't all just pretty. He took chances, and he was happy to take chances. And there were so many raw performances that,
doubt.
It wasn't like polished or pretty. No. It was just like give people this like
Boogie
essence.
Nights. Yeah, no, I mean, if I'm going to go back, people will probably go, oh, really? That's your favorite one? But listen, I'm going to go to,
there's certain things that connect to you, and you're just happy.
I'm going to say Mission Impossible 3. In any type of, that franchise was in the verge of like, they needed a good reboot, and J.J. Abrams feature film directorial debut. How's he going to do as a director? Tom Cruise, you had Michelle Monaghan, who, hey, I crush on. She was awesome in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and she's going to be in this. And, how is this guy going to be a villain? Like I said, the first 5 minutes of Mission Impossible 3 are just riveting. I was on the edge of my seat. And how that movie starts off is fantastic. And, you hear this said a lot about action movies, especially hero action movies. Your hero is only as good as your villain. And he, as a villain in Mission Impossible 3, drove that movie right up until the very end. And he was a very imposing figure for Ethan Hunt to track down. And the action in it changed. And so that's the one. I don't know. I just remember that opening scene, him having the gun going, Ethan, where is it? I'm counting to 3.
Well, Sarah's getting scared.
Hello.
Yeah, well, it's not a real
gun.
It's not a real gun.
Hilarious.
I'm like, what's going on?
So,
let's talk about, you kind of mentioned a few of the actors you got to work with. I mean, we've mentioned George Clooney, Ryan Gosling. Like, he's, Joaquin Phoenix. We just did a Harold Ramis special as well, and we talked about all the actors that he got to work with, and for me, I there's so many actors that always say, like, it's their dream. They want to work with as many talented people as possible, and
Sure.
Obviously it's a very tragic death and very unexpected, but in many ways he did get to kind of do. I mean,
in the short time he was here, he did so much.
Yeah, and again, Brad Pitt, Moneyball, Ryan Gosling, George Clooney, Al Pacino, Paul Newman, Meryl Streep, Tom Cruise. He got to work in J.J. Abrams' directorial feature debut. I mean, he worked, and then we should look up the directors of these films that he's worked with. I mean, he didn't really work, he wasn't working,
He worked in all of Paul Thomas Anderson's films except for There Will Be Blood.
Right.
He just was someone you could keep going back to because you knew he was going to be amazing.
Yeah, and, he worked... You're right. He had a fantastic, and when you think about his career starting back as early as the early 90s, when he was coming into some TV or motion picture, that's a long career.
Well, Hoffman has considered Robert De Niro to be the most inspiring actor when they worked together on Flawless in 1999. So yeah, I mean,
he's also named Daniel Day-Lewis, Paul Newman, Meryl Streep, and Christopher Walken as idols.
Yeah, and back in going just back to 1999, the talented Mr. Ripley.
Mr. Ripley. He worked with Anthony Hopkins in Red Dragon. Which again, an interesting choice because Red Dragon was a remake of Manhunter, but it was based off the Red Dragon book. Thomas Harris. This is the Hannibal Lecter lore we'll get into. The original movie, Michael Mann, William Peterson, but it was called Manhunter, but pretty much the same story. And then I always forget, Brett Ratner is directing Red Dragon, and it's more or less a retelling, but more based off of the book. So it's a prequel to The Silence of the Lambs. And, he plays this reporter, Freddie Lowndes. And I don't know if you remember the movie, but this is the character that gets set afire and he's in a wheelchair and he gets thrown down a huge hill while he's on fire. Yeah. I mean, it's that
I
scene
remember
alone,
that image.
Right. The image you remember. But, yeah, I mean, the guy, and I don't even know who he worked with on Broadway. Do you know who he acted against in Death of a Salesman?
Each thing right now. I can find out while you talk.
And he was Willie Loman, right? And then, Punch Drunk Love. He's with Adam Sandler. So he took roles he liked to work.
Yeah.
So, you respect that as a person. Alec Baldwin, State of Maine. We can go again with Tom Cruise and Magnolia. Who's in that movie. So, yeah, he had a full movie career.
I mean,
Robin Williams.
There's so many.
The Big Lebowski. We didn't even mention The Big Lebowski. He's worked with the Coen brothers. This guy.
And there was a Variety article that came out a couple weeks ago, just after his passing, where it said, we have yet to see the best from him. And they were speaking about Showtime's Happy-ish, which he was going to be the starring character in, called Tom Paine. And it just says he was, now he was getting into TV more, and Showtime has so many great TV shows,
sure.
And unlike networks, they're not apt to cancel them right after one season. So
yeah.
I feel like we could have gotten something different, now to kind of see it over, the course of, let's say even 3 seasons or 2, whatever it may have been. Even if it was just 1, it would have been great to see him. And so, they only have 1 episode filmed with him, so unfortunately, I highly doubt that there's a future with this show. But it would still be some sort of great to kind of see at least that pilot for fans.
Mm-hmm. Sure,
because people are really raving about what it could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just at least like in honor of.
Yeah.
In honor of.
And then I believe forgive me if I'm getting the fact wrong, but I believe A Most Wanted Man is his last completed work.
Okay.
Obviously, he's got the Hunger Games coming out, but I think that's what it is.
A Most
If
Wanted
not,
Man.
it could be God's Pocket. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
I forget exactly which one.
I'm not entirely sure.
But think of just in this year alone, he has God's Pocket, Most Beautiful Man. He would have had Happyish, the TV show, and then Hunger Games. So 4 projects just in 2014,
Constantly
and that's
working.
That's without probably taking on some other ones.
Yeah, I mean, again, like we've talked about the longevity of his career that any actress would love to have, and he did it. Perseverance. He worked hard at it. He was good at it. He didn't shy away from roles. He didn't have to be the star. He would do plays. He would do Broadway. Fill that need. Some actors have that need. They got to be in front of that live audience. But he got that, and he didn't shy away from doing plays in the park. It's hard to pin down, especially big commercial actors. It's like, hey, you want to do a play in the park? He didn't shy. He was a journeyman, so to speak. He was an actor's actor.
He was.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we kind of, again, we could go in so many different ways to this. I mean, just his IMDb is just chock full.
Chock full.
And again, and still so young.
Yeah.
That's the sad part about it.
It's the tragic part about it. Yeah, I mean, it's very tragic. He was a fantastic actor, and we have to talk about legacy to an extent. He has all these movies, under his belt and the plays, but the movies are forever. They're captured on film. They'll be on Blu-ray, whatever, streaming. And it is tragic. And I hope that it's sort of kind of can be used as an example that, it was tragic in the way in which he passed away.
Well,
and
many people, this started off with perhaps writers of like, you have to be depressed and an alcoholic to be a good writer. And, yes, you have to have lived emotion and be able to portray it, whether through writing, acting, directing, whatever sort of creative medium that you want to partake in. But, you don't have to be depressed and you don't have to be unhappy. And so that's the sad part about it to me is, there's ways around it. And for all the people that really did love him, for him to be in that state is really sad.
It is sad, and I won't know, and you can't take away from that at all. But, on the other hand, too, there's a part of me that it does sort of kind of make me angry because being such a talent, and like you were saying in the show Happyish, like we're never going to get to see him go on, and he had such a career. He had such a great career, and knowing that he left kids behind and a person behind and other people who loved him so much in a way that, listen, I'm not going to, I don't want to make little of addiction. I've been with some people who've had that devil on their shoulders, but what makes me angry about it is that he had the means more so than millions of people who are addicted in this country world over who don't have the means, the money to do it. And he did. And unfortunately, I don't know what goes through a gentleman's head. That to me is what really sets this as a tragedy. And it would be great if people could try to look at something and say, God, it could happen to him. It could happen to me. And, I really need this sort of kind of help because I do have the means to be better, to try to be better. And, the woman that
Sarah's
he was
going to be better too. I cannot speak to that, Sarah. We're talking about the most painful part, and Sarah, the 20-year-old that she is, of course, has her cell phone on in the studio when we're talking about people's tragic lives.
Well, that's
welcome to the new culture, Demetri.
Well, listen,
This is when you tell people, "Oh, I'm going to be done at 2," and they call you 4 minutes early.
Just sell it. Well,
that's life.
Yeah.
Life is unexpected if you've learned nothing else from today.
Goodness.
If anything,
in
we
like
celebrate.
80 billion hours I've been in the studio, my phone went off one time.
Well, that's all it takes.
we celebrate a career. I don't know personally I can't say, because he's been such a supporting and he's been such a, like, I don't go, hey man, I gotta go see The Master. It's like, you know what? I really feel like I want to see Capote again. It's weird. Like, his legacy will go on as being the actor's actor, as he was a great on his way to being greater. There could have been more Academy Awards. There could have been Emmy Awards if this cable show, that to me is the tragedy and the loss. And people really, look at it, because that's how bad addiction is. When a person who even has the means, the wealth, the money, he had a support group, and to lose his life so tragically, that to me is where the sad and anger is, as losing somebody, because I love movies so much. So,
Sarah, final thoughts?
I mean, I feel like I have to speak a little bit to that, because it's such a hard. The public, we get one image of of actor's life until kind of the breaking point. Like, we don't know. I know that he was married and had kids, and I feel so bad for them. And I know that I believe he was divorced about 2 years, or they separated 2 years ago. And I'm sure that attributed to his falling to addiction again. And I agree with you. I think you want people to seek that help, and you want people who have the means, especially, to push for that help, and for it not to be accepted that they're doing this to themselves. And it's just hard. It's sad, and you don't want it to happen, and it's a loss. And on one hand, like, I do look to him as a mentor for acting, but on life choices, I can't say the same.
Yeah. And that's what's tragic about it, because, you said it perfectly. And you have to kind of make that distinction, because I don't want to. I almost want to remember him as two separate people. You have to remember him as one, because that's who a person is. But I think overall, you can only wish that things had turned out differently. But you have to respect the work that he did do. Absolutely.
And the last thing I'll say, there's so many people with so many actors passing away recently. Everyone's, there's the haters, of course, who are saying, there's people that die every day, and we don't necessarily mourn them. And to those people, I say, listen, yes, every person's life is equally important. But, these ones, they affect so many people, and, this one in particular, it's a lesson. This one, if nothing else, walk away with the lesson of, as you guys mentioned, addiction. Sure. And so if not only the legacy of work that he's left behind, if he can leave behind the legacy of how much addiction really is terrible, then you know what, at least it can't make up for it, but it's something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so on that note, unfortunately, the weird dichotomy of this song and our sad thoughts, that's how we leave you today for Anatomy of a Movie. Anything else?
Well, I was going to say, we can look at this too. Going into Oscar weekend, Capote being what it was, this is in a sense too an Oscar tribute. And, keep on going to the movies, folks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We'll see you for the next dissection.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.
Thanks for watching Anatomy of a Movie on YouTube. For more on your favorite movies, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to let us know what you think in our comment section below here. Bye.